A very common definition of enterprise risk management is the process that companies use to identify, measure, manage, and disclose all key risks to increase value to stakeholders. Unfortunately, this doesn't provide enough guidance to develop a quality enterprise risk management program. You need a little bit more guidance. The first word in enterprise risk management, enterprise-wide. And unfortunately, oddly, most companies actually don't have their enterprise risk management program scoping out to the entire enterprise. Some reasons why. One is that they have an area that they've deemed as insignificant. This is really risky because you really never know how big the risk exposure is going to be. And it's not necessarily proportional. It could be multiples times the size of the revenues or assets in an area. So you need to have it enterprise-wide. Another reason why is that it's just an incomplete implementation. They just haven't gotten there yet. They haven't finished rolling it out. This is kind of like the bulkheads, the watertight walls in the Titanic that were great, except that they just didn't go all the way up to the top deck. So, you could be exposing your company to tremendous risk exposure if you don't roll out the program enterprise-wide. Another reason why an enterprise risk management program does not reach the full scope is that there's an area called a golden boy, or a unit called golden boy. And they're golden in terms of they've generated such growth in terms of profits or revenues that they've been able to exempt themselves from corporate scrutiny, including a corporate enterprise risk management program. Without that scrutiny, the company could be taking risks it doesn't intend to or doesn't understand. This actually happened with AIG. The Financial Products Division had that kind of power and did not return phone calls from the enterprise risk management area. And eventually, the risk that they exposed the AIG to took the company down. Unfortunately, most companies focus all or most of their efforts just on the financial sources of risk, ignoring the strategic and operational. And there's some reasons why this occurs. One reason is there's a persistent myth that financial sources of risk are by far the most important for companies, and they can really focus on that mostly. And that's not true. Virtually every industry study I've seen, including some research that I directed and co-authored recently, showed that by far strategic is the largest source of risk. Almost 2/3 of the sources of risks come from strategic sources, and the next largest is operational, which is almost a third, leaving a small remainder for financial. Even for financial services companies, at most it looks like 15% or only 1/7 of the sources of risk come from financial sources of risk. Another reason why companies have an overfocus on financial risk is that they have an inability to quantify strategic and operational risks. So they kind of just ignore it or give it short shrift or have a separate treatment for it, and it's not fully balanced. A third reason why companies have an overfocus on financial risk is financial analyst bias. These financial analysts are the ones that do the ERM quantification modeling, and their education, their certification, their training, their background, their experience, and even the name of their department is financial risk. And so they focus on what they know, they go to their comfort zone, and they shy away from the strategic and operational risks. ERM must be strategic, and it must focus on the 20 to 30 largest threats to the organization. Traditional risk management is more silo. HR looks at HR risk, technology looks at technology risk, legal looks at legal risk, and looking at one risk at a time. But that's problematic. That's not the way the world works. This ignores the complexity of your day in the business environment. Your day doesn't happen that everything goes exactly perfectly except for one item, one risk occurring. It's not the way it works. Multiple things happen differently than you expect. Some things go worse, some things go better. You need to look at both on an integrated basis. One repercussion of this is you're ignoring, if you have a silo approach, you're ignoring that some risks will offset each other. And this is why you developed a diversified portfolio in your business. ERM will help you quantify the value of the diversification benefits and look at risks that offset and capture that offsetting. The corollary to that is actually more dangerous to omit, is that you also have risks that will exacerbate the impact of each other. There was a study called Value Killers that looked at a 10-year period, and this predates the financial crisis, a 10-year period of the stock market, and looked at the largest losses. And they found that over 80% of these value killers were the result of two or more risks interacting at the same time. So if you're not capturing multiple risks occurring simultaneously, you're missing some of the things that can really kill the company. And this is pretty intuitive. It's kind of like a boxer could take one big punch on the chin, but it's really a combination punch, which could be two moderate punches, that really could knock the company out. ERM must include decision making. And this is the word management in enterprise risk management. And oddly, this one is also skipped by many companies. They go through the work of doing risk identification, prioritization, risk measurement, quantification, and then they skip the risk decision-making step and they just report. They do risk messaging. They report the information to the board. Here's a heat map. Here's our top 10 list. Here's our red, yellow, green color coding for how it's going. And they actually skip the opportunity to make better risk return decisions using the ERM information. Traditional risk management was more about mitigation, downside volatility. And the folks that did this work, they were more, no, don't do this, don't do that. And they often weren't brought into the decision-making table. In contrast, enterprise risk management balances risk and return management. Upside and downside volatility are both in scope. So risk-taking is in scope. And this is critical because it's the key linkage between risk and return.